Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industry. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and I'm happy to be here, as always, to get to just hang out with friends that I meet, tell you about the latest, coolest person that I've run into out on the trade show floor. And that would have to be Chad Pilbeam, who is with Beer Logic and so much more. Chad, I wanted to start today with that excitement, okay? Because I don't think people know who you are, first of all. Now they've been seeing your photo a little bit more, seeing you interact on stage, seeing you in videos, but I know you from way back. We won't talk about how far way back, but when I met you, you were talking about marketing. So I want to talk about that, but first I want to talk about you. Chad, who are you? What you doing these days?
Yeah, the first thing is in order to make sure everybody sticks around for the entire podcast, we're going to talk about beer, and that's really going to happen. Don't worry. In fact, I may even crack one open here in just a second.
You should, absolutely.
Well, I mean, thirst is a real thing that we have to deal with, and also beer is a creative element to the business process, which I will explain. But yes, my name is Chad Pilbeam. I am an entrepreneur, public speaker, creative marketing type person. I help small businesses with marketing plans, launches on new products, also social media, coming up with ideas for how to get noticed. And the interesting thing that I found is there's a niche market for businesses that don't have big budgets. A lot of marketing companies, marketing firms have really, really talented people and that can do amazing things. Unfortunately, though, those come with really big price tags. And I managed to carve out a little business helping people get noticed on much smaller budgets. And I've been doing this now for over a decade. You said you didn't want to go back to when we first met, but
it was definitely a little bit over a decade.
Oh, well, I was going to say when we first met, I was first starting. And that's the weird thing is I was sitting there and I was drinking beer and I met you. And I think the very first time we met, I think we can mention this. It's called
Absolutely.
I Am Revo. I think it was
Yes.
I Am Revo.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Houston, Texas. And it was a one-time event in an attempt to get industrial marketers to look at their marketing from a very progressive, very creative, entertaining, energetic perspective. And we assembled an ensemble, an all-star team of people.
Thank you, Carrie O'Malley.
Yes, there's the name right there. Blast from the past. And you got invited to the same event that I got invited to. And I was the anchor. I was the closer, the keynote, if you will, entertainment. And I do something called Beer Logic. And it's everything I ever needed to know. I learned from beer. And a lot of people ask me that question like, so are you a motivational type speaker? Are you a comedian? Are you what are you? And I was like, well, you're half right on both. I'm actually a demotivational speaker, and I use humor. And I said, well, I make fun of the industries, and we basically identify the things that drive us nuts. And the cool thing is we're sampling beer all along the way, which makes us feel a little bit better about some of the decisions that we've made. And then we say, let's not do that again. And then we learn how to improve from that. And
well,
it's
I have to
fun
say,
show.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I don't even like beer, y'all. But any beer that Chad picks out, I like. He can pick out a really good beer. But he also can take that message around beer and use it for all of these different organizations. So my favorite, I'll have to just tell how we work together. We were at the Fluid Sealing Association and I was the marketing chair, which is hilarious to me. But I bring in the talent. Okay. So we bring in Chad to tell them everything that they need to know about marketing. They learn from beer, basically. And so
I remember this event. Yeah.
was
it in Chicago?
Yes, it was in Chicago. And I remember this engineer, I won't use his name, but he loved it so much. He loved craft beers and really the hoppy beers. You explain the hoppiness of the beers and all of that. And I was just blown away how much he enjoyed that presentation, because he really did like craft beers and unique beers. And I'm looking for the one that doesn't taste like anything. And he just loved it. So I know we have to talk a little bit about beer because this is your whole thing. But it really made a difference. It made a difference to the people that were there, the memories that they had. My memory to this day of watching this person that never talked about anything very much just come alive and talk about how cool this beer was. So, yeah, we had a big time.
It was a lot of fun. And that's the beauty of beer. So some of your audience may be listening right now. It's like, I don't like beer. I don't care about beer. However, you know about beer, and beer is a catalyst that brings people together, and it does inspire some creativity. If you don't believe me, I can mention a handful of beer names and you know the jingles, and it sticks in your head. In fact, I know some people, if you're going through a beer aisle and somebody sees a brand, even if they don't buy the brand, and they see the brand and all of a sudden they start humming the jingle, it's like, see, it worked. And it's because the creativity that comes out of that. Now, one of the things that I've discovered is people are always looking for a way to be entertained and informed. They want to learn, but nobody wants to learn in a boring way. And so we want to go ahead and create an environment where people are entertained and they leave there saying, wow, that was a lot of fun. And I actually remember this, and this. The crazy thing is any public speaker gets up in front of an audience and talks for an hour, only about 20% of the information is retained. That is very low. I mean, that's worse than the weatherman. The meteorologist gets it wrong half the time, and that guy keeps his job. We're doing our part at 20%. So as I always like to tell people, I like to take that 20%. We're going to crack open a few beers and see if we can lower it. Okay, no, I'm kidding. What happens is people get to actually sample beer, and it creates a fun, memorable environment, and all of a sudden they remember more. The retention goes up. And that's all we're trying to do, is find a more creative way to do it. Now, some people are going to go ahead and challenge me on this, and they're going to say, wait a minute, are you saying you need alcohol to have a good time? Yes. No, I'm kidding. We're no, that's not
It
the
does
case at
help
all.
break some people out of their comfort zones, which I think is good. Maybe not
It is.
all the way out of their comfort zone, but it's just enough to be creative.
Right. And beer is loaded. The beer industry is loaded with creativity. So let's say I work in, I'm just going to pick an industry at random. Let's say industrial pumps. Okay. Just a total random industry.
Random. It could be the marketing. I don't know. Like,
yeah, could be anything. So let's just say I work in industrial pumps, and I'm looking for a way to be able to convey information about my industry, about my product, through marketing or through social media or through interactions and field research, anything it is. There are 1,000,000,000 examples of people who do it traditional ways. When you find the creative way that breaks out, that gets noticed, Seth Godin called it the purple cow. Fields and fields of black and white cows. There's one purple cow. How many black and white cows were there? Lots. Well, how many exactly? I don't remember. I couldn't count them all. It was a bunch of noise. And after a while, you're like, okay, it's just black and white. But then you always remember that purple one. There's a purple cow. Now everybody's going to ask me, where's there a purple cow? It's an analogy, folks. Just stay with me. Okay. It's, it's marketing. And so if I'm working in the pump industry or any industrial industry, and I want to stand out, find a creative way to do it. Beer is just one way to do it. People have asked me, can you do it with cigars? Yes. Can you do it with wine? Yes. Whiskey? Yes. They say, well, why haven't you done that yet? Because I'm a beer guy. That's just how I work. So it's meant to get people to think creatively and think differently about an industry that they may be so settled in that they need to be kind of shaken or pushed into another environment. And if you look at the marketers in the beer and brewing industry, there's some pretty creative ads.
that's what I was going to say. I was thinking, there's so much imagery that you can use in your presentation. So many examples that are out there.
You mean like
and
this?
So I just think, yeah, beautiful. It's even purple.
It is. Yeah. Pour a beer here.
He's a master at pouring these beers too. Look, it's not, let's see. Is it? Oh, look. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Like a picture in a cookbook.
Yes. And I'm serious. If you don't like beer and you know really do want to find one that you like, he has some examples. And I'm like I'm saying like a lot. I liked the beer that he picks out for me. It's important to look for ways to get people's attention, and there is a large portion of people who do like beer and socializing with others. And if you can combine that into something informational, like you said, and that you really want them to remember or to have fun with, then it's working out. So we've done it. We've done it at Epic, the Empowering Pumps and Industry Conference. The last one was at San Jacinto College in Texas, which is back in your going back to your roots there, Chad, bringing in
flying
cool
backwards.
Beers.
Yeah, that was fun.
I thought it was. And so coming in and kind of doing your presentation is part of that and kind of your spiel, but you also did our award ceremony and brought I was going to say humor, but it's not just humor. It's just fun, right? It's not all about being a comedian.
It's energy. It's fun. It's right. It's not like I'm there to roast anybody, and I'm not there to be, make me laugh, funny man. No, that's not what I'm there to do. I'm there to bring some energy, kind of elevate the presentation of all this stuff, because I don't think there's a single person out there that enjoys sitting for an hour. And now for our next award, ladies and gentlemen, this individual has over 30 years experience in the, oh my goodness, stop it. No, you want to have some fun. And so what we want to do, especially whenever we're recognizing somebody who's won an award, why not celebrate it? And the example I like to use, and some people get offended by this for obvious reasons, but I like to use the Oscars. And Oscars has been so controversial, and even the Grammys.
I love an award show. So
right, because of the energy and the excitement. I don't care what they're saying. I'm not getting into the politics. I'll never be political. I'll never be offensive. You're never going to hear me talk about anything crass or controversial, but I'm going to bring that energy to it. And I think more people need to experience that, because there are a lot of connotations, and a lot of people have expectations of, I need to go. I've heard people say, I need to go and receive this award. I'm like, you need to go and receive it? That sounds like your mother's
painful.
Not here. Your mother's not here saying, eat your vegetables. No, it is, you are being recognized. And if we're going to recognize, let's celebrate them. And that's one of the things I really enjoy doing. And you brought up a really good point. You were in a room when we were in Chicago. You mentioned this one individual, probably some engineer.
Yes.
All right. And
quiet most of the times in the meetings. I couldn't get to know him very well. Hard to read. Yeah, that kind of engineer.
So here's how you know you win with an engineer. And then and I'm picking on engineers here. Charlie's like, where's he going with this? No, this is what happens. Okay. They sit there with their arms crossed and they listen. And occasionally you'll get a little smile. And then at the end, they'll say, that was good. And it was like, all right, we made progress. Because if they don't say anything, either their expectations were met or they weren't, but you never know. But when they say that was good, that okay. And the whole idea is to work with somebody like yourself who is open to introducing this. And this is why I love working with Charlie. I'm going to go ahead. I know this is supposed to be about beer logic, but Charlie is do your thing, get out there, have fun with it. I want people to enjoy themselves. I want them to remember this event. And I'm like, okay, Charlie. Yep. All right. You signed the waiver. Here we go. Increase your liability insurance. Let's get nuts. And we go out there, and honestly, we don't get nuts. We just have a lot of fun doing it. And at the end, people aren't applauding out of courtesy. They're applauding because they really enjoyed celebrating the people. They enjoyed the event. They enjoyed the organizer. And that's the other thing is I don't like to make it about me at all. I like to make it about the content, the people who are in the industry, the people who organize it. It's really about that. So I'm industry agnostic in that way. and that I
Well, I
can
think you do a
jump
good
around.
job, Chad. You do a great job at, making sure that people feel comfortable, that they're entertained, that they're engaged. And at the end of the day, the biggest compliment, I'll say this, whether it's a meetup we do, a podcast interview, and they finish it, right? And they say, that was fun. And it is such a compliment. And a lot of the times it's them sharing their stories, them participating and getting an award with you, right? You're sharing in somebody's life. And at the end of the day, you help to make it fun. Like that is the greatest reward that I get from, and I hear it a lot after our podcast. So no pressure there, Chad, to tell me that.
Oh, no, this
But
is fun because
yeah,
it's weird because I also do a beer radio show. So I'm going to go ahead and plug the radio show. What's on Tap Radio? That's What's on Tap Radio. What's on Tap Radio? Don't forget the radio part. And in fact, here, because we're recording this, there it is. What's on Tap Radio? Make sure you check it out. We are on the iHeartRadio network. We're also available on demand podcast wherever podcasts can be found. That's right. Where all the premium podcasts can be found and the not so premium ones. We're everywhere. And
can you just put that up one more time? Just put that up on the screen more time. I just want to point out to all of you the marketing that goes on this. You see, it's a podcast, it's a microphone, it's like sending things out, and then it's a beer. I just love it. It's beautiful. Okay.
Yep. And we've got stickers. We slap them everywhere. But yeah,
What's
if you want
on
stickers,
Tap Radio?
What's on Tap Radio? That's right. 2 hours of beer for your ear. Crack one open and tune in. That's right. Every Sunday, 3 to 5 Central Time on KPRC 950 AM on iHeartRadio Network and anywhere in the world on iHeartRadio. So
You do that so well.
Well, we've been doing it for 10 years. So
what?
Yeah, this is I say, let me hold on. I oversold it. This is our 10th year. So don't
congratulations.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. And when we get great guests on and we have great content, the show just goes easy and fun. That's why I say again, when I partner with people like you, and I partnered recently with KCI, that was just a great group and being able to work with them. There are other people I've worked with in other industries. I've worked in the lumber industry. I've done warehousing. I've done pest control. I mean, and people say, okay, so you're just kind of you're a hired hitman. In a way, I'm industry agnostic in that I believe every profession is looking for a way to stand out. And I think beer is a catalyst for a discussion. And the cool thing is scientists, and they did the work for me. I didn't have to worry about this. I just, did a little Google search. Do you drink coffee?
Not anymore, but I have.
You have? Oh, so you kicked that.
I did. I'm now a tea girl.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, there's probably tea. If you go to any break room in any corporation, you're going to find a coffee pot. And you're probably going to find some tea in there now as well, because people like you have switched. And so there's
the pods. They have tea pods now that'll go in your Keurig.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. See, it all works out. So everybody gets their caffeine fix, but scientists went and did the research on this. I was fascinated by this, and they wanted to know which was a better product for helping people on the job. Was it coffee or tea, or excuse me, coffee or beer? I'm like, well, this is a no-brainer. So they went and they did the research on it, and they did studies on it, and they figured this out. They said for repetitive, detail-oriented tasks, coffee far superior to beer, obviously. So if you're doing a lot of accounting work, spreadsheets, just a lot of repetitive reports and things like that, have that cup of coffee. However, the one skill and the one attribute that is the hardest to capture for any employer in any industry is creativity. People are looking for new ideas all the time. You ask anybody who does an event, we're looking for something new. What's new come from? Being creative. They did studies and they found that a couple of beers will actually make you more creative. So my question is to all you HR representatives out there, you got the coffee pot. Where's the keg? Put a keg in the break room. People will get more creative. You're looking for that new idea. Hey, how are we going to differentiate this product from our competition? How are we going to get the next big breakthrough in engineering? What are we going to do? Well, let's go get a cup of coffee. Wrong answer. Get a beer. It makes a difference. Science. Hey, don't believe. No, I
It's
didn't do the
proven.
research.
It's proven. It's proven.
It
And we've
is.
proven it as well by in our industry at our industry events, like our industry events that we've done. So this will be the, let's see, the third time I've seen you perform. Well, fourth time actually. Fourth time I've seen you perform. And each time it's fun. I remember what you're talking about. I have an idea of something that I need to add to my business, or the way that I'm looking at something. I need to shift it in order to grow a piece of my business. So there's so much there that it really is just about sitting, having a conversation, having a beer, listening to somebody who's fun, entertaining, that kind of will take you out of that norm. I think is also really important. There's only so many fun, creative conversations you can have in the same boardroom.
So the boardroom spelled B-O-R-E-D is just one of those places where you can honestly fall asleep, lose your place. Nobody's on time. Nobody's ends the meeting on time. And then you have another meeting to try and recap everything. They say something like 17% of all board meetings or meetings are effective. 17%. See, that's worse than being a public speaker. That's 20% right there. But of course, don't forget that 83.6% of all statistics are made up, and that's a statistic. So, you just do whatever you want with that information. But it is true. We are looking for ways to be entertained. And I'm going to go ahead and give a plug for the guy who really inspired me, guy by the name of Scott McCain. He is a public speaker. He's also an entrepreneur. I listened to him speak. Oh my goodness. We may be saying 20 years ago. He's still out there on the circuit and he's doing his thing. And he wrote a book called All Business is Show Business. And his whole point is people want to be entertained. They really want to, they need to learn, but they want to be entertained. And if you can teach while entertaining, you've invented something, or you've met a need and created something, a product or a service that just exceeds expectations because they don't think it exists. And that's what Beer Logic has strived to be. Beer Logic, everything I've ever needed to know, I learned from beer. Even if you don't like beer, you understand beer as a catalyst. I mean, who doesn't watch? I know tons of people do not watch the Super Bowl. I don't care about football, but I'll watch the commercials.
That's right.
Okay. You may never eat a Dorito, but you watch the Doritos commercials. You may not drink beer, but you watch the beer commercials. And beer has such an influence over so many other things that people remember it. I mean, who doesn't remember the Budweiser frogs or the was that and all the other, all that other stuff. Somebody opens a can of Busch and they go, it's Busch. I mean, it's all of those things. That Samuel Adams got my cousin from Boston, and he's doing all these things. It inspires some creativity, even if you don't drink. And it's not about drinking beer in itself. It's about the culture that creates. I'll give you another example. What happens when we go to these conferences? Charlie, you and I were there, and you were out, and you were meeting with clients. I was meeting with clients. And then when it was all said and done, we were like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, I had a couple people I'm meeting with. And then I'm going to head where? Where do we head? Where do we go?
Go to the bar.
There you go. Bingo. And we didn't go to the bar and order a salad. Okay. Nobody said, oh, yeah, could I have the soup, please? Okay. No, we got a drink. And what did we do? We sat there and we talked about all the client meetings that we had. We talked about the event that we were attending. We talked about the next event that we were going to do together. And we remember those conversations. We didn't sit there and get drunk into a stupor, and we didn't stay until all hours of the night. We created some memories. We had some great business discussion. We reinforced friendship that already exists. I mean, these are the things that happen. And so when you create those environments, or rather when those environments are there and you don't take advantage of them, that's unfortunate. The thing is you go to a conference and they have to be created. That's kind of where Beer Logic jumps in. We know there's somebody going to get up and do a welcome message. We know that somebody's going to get up and give a keynote speech. We know we're going to give away some awards. We know there are going to be breakout sessions and workshops. How can we make it memorable and more fun?
And that's where Chad comes in. and does that for us. And so I loved watching you this past month, kind of getting ready for Valve World Americas there at the show as well. And I think what I like to see is the concept of Beer Logic and it growing and you being more involved a lot because you're a marketer. You understand marketing. That's where I met you at a marketing conference, right? And so there's this understanding of how the beer industry markets well. And can we do this with some of the most boring type of presentations that are out there? Can you do it? Can you make a boring presentation fun? The answer is yes, you can. And I say that not because our industry is boring, but because sometimes the repetitiveness, you get tired of doing the same presentation. I get tired of, introducing, people over and over again, not because I don't love it. I love it. I love giving people those memories. I love, bringing people together and creating that feeling. But it shouldn't always be me. Okay. So part of it is making sure that you have somebody on your team that can also make it fun and memorable, even if it seems to everybody else that this is maybe not supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be informational,
right.
It doesn't have to be that way. It can be both. So
it can, because it really should be, because nobody says, I'm really looking forward to going to that boring conference. Nobody says that. Everybody says, I am going to the conference, and they go in and they hope for something. And if it doesn't meet those expectations, there's nothing more disappointing as a conference organizer. And I've organized and worked with organizations that have organized events. There's nothing more disappointing than seeing people get up and walk out in the middle. And that is terrifying, because you can't do anything to stop it. Once it starts and it happens, you've lost them and they're gone. And that's frustrating. And then the second most terrifying thing is not being able to get people in the first place. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't help but think, and again, I don't, maybe I got lucky. In fact, the name of my umbrella company is really kind of funny. I don't market under this, but it's called Accidental Success Media. Okay. And this is the dumbest thing. I'm going to share a story.
I love it, actually. Yeah.
Because everybody asked, they said, you know a ton about beer. If you knew as much about beer as you knew about anything else, man, in our company, we'd be rich. And then somebody said, well, maybe you should talk about beer for a living and maybe you can make a living at it. Okay. All right. Let's see how that works out. And it really went well for a while.
Planting a seed for somebody, I remember that's the reason why I started my company for myself, is because somebody planted that seed that said, you just let me know when you create that pump digest, right? Like, it is that simple to encourage somebody, and in a space of just having a conversation.
That's all. Yeah, it really did come down to something like that. And I pitched the idea, and I remember the very first speaking gig I got, no joke. I said, they asked me, they said, can you give me a list of ideas for our annual conference, and I'll pay you if you can come up with some really creative ideas. And I said, okay, yeah. So this is one of the side, I'm a marketer. And so I came up with these ideas for a warehousing conference. And I said, I have 11 ideas for you. And he said, 11? Why 11? And I said, well, what number did you think it was going to be? And he said, well, I thought maybe, 3 or 5 or 10. And I said, why is everything 3, 5 or 10? Well, give me 3 goals you want to accomplish this year. What's your 5-year plan? And where do you see yourself in 10 years? I'm like, why is everything 3, 5, and 10? I picked 11. It's a prime number. Let's go with that. How's that? It's one more than 10. You should be impressed. And they were, okay, all right. What are your, and so I gave them 10 ideas. They said, okay, what's your 11th idea? And I said, you're not going to go for it, but here it is. It's called Beer Logic. I said, what? And I explained to him what it was. I said, I'm going to turn your entire conference into a discussion about beer, and people are going to learn, laugh, and get to drink beer, and they're going to leave, and they're going to have remembered more about your event in warehousing than they would have otherwise learned. This is the dumbest idea I have ever heard, Chad. I know. It was terrible. No, seriously, you actually are pitching this idea. I said, yes. They ran it to the board and said, you're not going to believe this. This guy pitched this idea, and the board went, that's great. Let's do it. I was like, boom.
And Beer Logic is born.
And Beer Logic was born. And so I've been doing this. Yeah. The other thing I've learned about Beer Logic, or that Beer Logic has taught me, and this has been very interesting. COVID did a number on so many businesses. Sole proprietor right here, individual. You work in media, you work in marketing. I have no doubt that COVID hurt your business on some level. The majority
I mean, I had to create a podcast to talk to people because I was just going nuts without my people. So,
right. Well, we were still doing our radio show, and I did a Zoom format Beer Logic, which I learned something very valuable. And if you remember, you were doing all those Zoom meetings, everything virtual, and then somebody comes on at the end. Okay, listen, we're all done with all of our business for the day, but now we're going to spend an hour on Zoom. You can open a beer at home if you want and listen to this guy talk. And nobody wanted, everybody's like, please just let me go home. How about this? Can I just go away and then drink beer and just pretend I listened? And nobody wanted to listen to me. And I don't blame them. You sit on a Zoom call for 8 hours and then hour 9 is this guy. Nobody wanted to do it. And it crushed my business for 2 years. Nobody had, meetings and events. And so I've had to adapt and rebuild the business. And the creative side of beer and watching this all happen, how breweries adapt and brands adapt and markets change, it challenges you as a business owner to do that. And I mean, I can only think of, just the supply chain and how the supply chain was affected, the industrial industry. What do you do? I mean, you can't magically make trucks appear and trucks show up on time, and you can't magically make raw materials show up so that you can produce pipeline or pumps or any of that. What do you do? And you don't just sit there and go, darn. No, you've got to do something. And
it's not the same thing. And it's not the same thing. You have to adapt, like you said. Like it's a must in any type of challenging environment. The word adapt or pivot, right, is the key to who's still successful, right? And even going through and taking a break from work, like that, it may be a part of your work you can take a break from, but at the core, you've got to know what you want to do and how to get back at it. And what can you adapt and what can you do a little bit different that keeps you in the industry, keeps you out there. Especially I'm talking to my speakers out there, right? The people that were public speaking or event company, even like they did a little pivot, adapted to the environment, and then you got to do it again. When people are going back out, they're going 90 miles an hour again. It's like we didn't learn anything during that. Now it's going on warp speed again. But the part of that is, okay, well, now you got to shift back. You can't stay in, doing Zoom happy hours. Like that's not going to work for you.
No, yeah, those did not work. Oh, that was so painful to watch because you see that level of when people on the Zoom call and they're like, okay, we made it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got 1 more hour. And like, are you kidding me? No. And they didn't want anything to do with it. But yeah, it's been interesting. And I will also tell you that if you're an event organizer, or let's forget events, let's just say you're in sales and marketing and you're looking for a way to engage your audience, your customers. I mean, golf outings, people love them. Even if you don't golf, there's beer and there's driving around in a golf cart. Yeah, it's like the only place it's safe to drink and drive. I'm kidding. But you can go, you know what I'm saying? There's going to be food. There are going to be raffles. There are going to be prizes. You're going to hang out with colleagues. You're going to get out of the office, get some vitamin D, be out there in the sun. It's a great time. And there are other events, cocktail hours, and there are barbecues and, tickets to events, magic show. No, I shouldn't say magic shows, but more like Cirque du Soleil. I've seen people do that, and they have, the big entourage and all that fun stuff. And people are trying to find ways to get their audience to show up. If I just say, hey, you know what? We're going to rent out this bar and show up and just have a network happy hour. People will go if it is one, I'm just going to be blunt. If it's self-serving. If I have a reason to be there, I'm going to go. Or it's convenient and I don't have anything else going on. If you create something though, that's exclusive, and what I like to use in marketing, I use this and I use it in all my presentations. I say interesting, relevant, and exclusive. Interesting. Is it interesting to your audience? Hear organizers all the time say, "Oh no, this is going to be really interesting. I mean, wouldn't you want to know this?" I'm thinking to myself, no, no, it's interesting to you, but it's not interesting to me. But yeah, so don't say things that you want your audience to know. Identify what your audience wants to know and then say those things. So interesting, relevant. Okay. That ties into the relevance portion is whatever it is that's interesting and gets their attention, make sure it's relevant to them. And then exclusive. What are you saying and what are you doing that is different than everybody else? And that's the marketing side of Beer Logic that I've done for the last over a decade is when somebody says, I need to launch a new product, I ask them, tell me something interesting about it that's going to get my attention. Tell me how it's relevant to your target audience. And then tell me what's unique about it that no other competitor can say. And that is a challenge because especially if you're dealing in a commodity market, whoo, yeah, you get an engineer really upset really fast. What do you mean? It's just better. Why is it better? Because it is. Okay. Or they'll tell you why it's better and they'll give you some very scientific technical definition. And then I'll say, okay, is that relevant though? And does it matter? And oh, by the way, if I say that, is it interesting? Does it get people's attention? Well, no, but it's still better. Okay. But we still got to market it. So interesting, relevant, and exclusive. I use that all the time. Feel free to steal that, folks. It's okay. It's not trademark.
Well, I steal it by hiring Chad to come in and run the show. I remember that from your presentations, and I think that the other part, the reason why I say that is because you can't just anybody take this information and run a Beer Logic event. Like that's your brand, and you've created an amazing experience for people. But what you can take from that is these marketing ideas and apply that to your business and what you do every day. And so what I love is everything you need to know about marketing, you learn from beer, right?
Everything I ever need to know about marketing, I learned from beer.
Thank you. And see how he does that? He can just roll it off. I'm like, have to think about it. But the marketing part of it applies to my business. And at the time when I was at the Fluid Sealing Association, it applied to theirs. They were trying to market their company better and their organization better. And so we were trying to get people to be creative and understand that they have a story to tell. It's really important. It's relevant out in the market, and they're the only ones that can tell it. And so, I mean, that was 10 years ago. Well, probably not. It was around 10 years ago. And it's so fun to see where they are.
We weren't going to go back that far, but yeah, we just did.
Yeah. So it was so fun to see them now today and sharing their messages and getting out there with their voice, knowing that, this fun time with Chad doing his Beer Logic thing. Okay. And I think that you'll be able to say that same thing about you being at Valve World Americas and meeting some of those people in our industry and getting them excited about the valve industry for one, right? Like we have been trying to make these industries, valves, pumps, equipment, manufacturing, all of these, we say we want to make them sexy. Well, you have to bring people, you have to attract people in. And I think beer does it. I think Chad and your energy does it, getting people excited about what their work is. So I wanted to let people know that they were going to be seeing more of you. Go back and watch those videos.
Hope so.
Yes. Well, I know. From my perspective, we want to have you at Epic 2023 in Georgia.
It's on my calendar.
Okay.
It's already on my calendar. You didn't even know it, but I
just kind of threw it out there.
You just told me when it was, and I just wrote it in my calendar.
Good. So bringing the fun again to Epic. I like to continue with people that we work with, that we have a good time together, and that you're going to meet so many people. Hopefully the people that you met in Texas will come over to Georgia, and that's how it continues to grow. And that memorable experience keeps happening. So Chad, I'm going to give you the last word here. What do you want our audience to know?
Beer Logic conferences and events. So a lot of the social media and online presence has been affected by COVID, and it's in the rebuild. And so if you go to LinkedIn, you'll find me at Chad Pilbeam. You'll find me on social media at Chad Pilbeam or at Chad, the Beer Logic guy, but Beer Logic conferences and events. And if you're looking for a way to entertain clients, if you're looking for a way to do team building, a manager's meeting, and you want to have a motivational type presentation where we can learn, laugh, and sample beer, because we're going to drink beer. It is a fun event. It's a way to engage everybody because banter is encouraged. Yes, you can heckle me. It's it's a lot of fun, and you will leave there having looked at your industry from a completely different perspective and had fun. And the thing I like to remind people always is good stories make beer taste better, and good stories make your brand stand out.
Absolutely. Well, you stand out to me, Chad, and I do have a little rapid fire because I think it's fun. And so I'm going to ask you a couple questions. One, what is your favorite book?
Oh my goodness. Purple Cow. Sorry, I mentioned it earlier. Purple Cow. Seth Godin was fantastic. Also, All Business is Show Business. Scott McKain. They're ingrained. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I read the Bible, so I like the Bible. So those three
It's a
books
good
right
book.
there. Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
book. It's been around. The Bible's been around for a little while. I think it was published first in. No, I'm just kidding.
so,
I do.
I like the good book too. Okay. Number two is, what is your favorite music?
Oh, I am a sucker for yacht rock. If you want to sit, I've got a pontoon boat right out here. I live in Southwest Michigan on a little lake, and I've got a pontoon boat, and I party in slow motion. And I've got yacht rock playing. I've got everything from Michael McDonald to Kenny Loggins to Toto to um, uh, Player. I mean, Ambrosia. I've got all that stuff playing, and everybody's like, "What is wrong with you?" It's like, is this like soft rock from the 70s? Like, no, late 70s, early 80s, 1977 to 1982 to be exact, with a smooth groove, bass lines, and low percussions that blend in sultry voices. Like, you've done that before. It's like, that
My
is the
face,
official definition of yacht rock.
my face is hurting from smiling. Okay. So, other question I ask is, what is the best advice you have ever received?
Oh, my dad told me don't screw it up, and that I don't know if that was good advice. I mean, it's probably good advice, but they probably could have offered that a little bit differently.
You
There's
probably
there's a
are going to screw it up. Everyone
Yeah,
is,
oh yeah,
and it's
oh
fine.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, my thought is I'm gonna combine a couple of pieces of advice, and I'm just gonna share it, just life lessons. One is when you screw up, not if, when, own it, own it, and then don't make the same mistake again. And so be accountable, because it goes to your reputation. And the other one is if you're going to fail, fail quick. Don't drag it out, because a lot of people are like, I'm so afraid of failure and I'm not sure if this is going to be successful. So let's take our time and go really, really, really slow. And then it's just like a slow and painful death of a career or an idea. It's like, no, go hard, have it blow up in your face, then clean up the mess, move on. Why? Because you shouldn't work harder on an old idea. In fact, that's a Scott McKain one right there. Again, I mentioned his book, All Business is Show Business. He said this. He said, working harder on an old plan is not a plan for success.
Oh, that's good. So my next question was about, if somebody was coming into the industry, what advice would you give? I'm gonna elaborate on that, and I ask you, if like a young marketer, what is some advice you would give a young marketer?
Okay, so just for the record, if we're talking about the beer industry, if you're coming into the beer industry, don't. It's there's not a lot of money to be made. If you're going into the pump or industrial valve pipeline industry, know that you're going to have to work to make it look sexy. And if you're coming in as a marketer and you're looking to be a marketer, what advice would I give? Um, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say this: learn digital and go deep. Go deep. Don't go wide. A lot of people, it used to be when you were a marketer, you had to be broad. You had to understand television, radio, billboard, newspaper, magazine, print, graphic, copywriting, brochures, trade shows, sales, samples. prototypes. You had to understand all of that stuff. And now it's so much more specialized, and it really focuses on digital. No digital marketing, no your Google. Number one question I get asked, are you an expert in Google Analytics? No, but I really wish I was.
Mhm.
If I was an expert in Google Analytics, I could probably make 3 times the amount of money. And so I look at it and I'm like, okay, should I change? And about the time I change and I start looking at Google Analytics, you know what happens?
They change.
Google Analytics change. I'm like, ah, be specific in that area. I would highly recommend, if you can master that discipline, oh, you will absolutely do well as a marketer.
Hey, I didn't get enough. So this is a little bit of a bonus episode with Chad. I need to know a little bit more about you and how you got into the industry, how you became a marketer. How did Beer Logic come to existence? I need all that. So tell me more.
Well, again, my company's name is called Accidental Success Media. I mean, that's the business name. I don't market that, but people ask, they're like, how'd you do this? It was an accident. And so if you're listening right now, you're like, okay, he's going to give us the secret sauce. Okay, get ready to write all this down. Don't do it. Okay. It's not an easy thing to do. It was totally accidental. If I had to recreate it, and I've learned this since COVID, because when the business died and it was dead for 2 years, I tried to recreate it post COVID the same way I built it the first time. And that dog does not hunt. Okay. You have to evolve. So I'm going to tell you how it happened. I am a graduate of Grand Valley State University. I got a degree in advertising and public relations. I was not 5 years old in kindergarten, sitting there on my little carpet square with my juice. And actually, we didn't have juice. We had milk, because that's how old I am. We didn't have juice pouches yet. Capri Sun wasn't invented yet. So I sat there with my milk, and Miss Schiller comes around and says, Chad, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a soccer player or a movie star, or I want to talk about beer for a living. And boom, my dream came true, right? See, it's always starting early. No, none of that happened. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I frankly didn't know what I was going to do at Grand Valley. And I took a speech class, and it was the only class I frankly aced. And I said, what can I do with this degree? And they said, public relations. I said, score, cool, get a degree and move on. I said, well, as long as I don't go work in the industrial world, I'm fine. So I went and worked for Caterpillar. It's like, okay, well, and I worked for Caterpillar for a couple of years. And I said, well, their headquarters for this division is in Houston. As long as I don't have to go to Houston, I'm fine. I went to Houston. And so then I stayed there. And then I switched over to a trade association in the oil and gas industry. Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to share this story. This is a little bit indicative of some of the salespeople of this time, but a lot of the male sales reps that I was being mentored by would do 2 things. And I'm just going to be blunt here. I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not saying it was endorsed by any of my employers. My employers did not endorse this. But they would spend money on one of 2 things, either really expensive steakhouses or adult entertainment establishments. And I didn't do either one of those. I saw that as a waste of money, and I didn't want to participate in those things. So instead, I noticed that there were these things called brew pubs popping up. And I started going to these brew pubs, and I'd sit down and I'd order, a fried chicken sandwich for, $9 or something like that. And I'd save the company a ton of money, but I got to talk to the brewer. And that is where you learn all this stuff. So now today, if you go and you ask to see the brewer's like, what's wrong? Is he going to complain about my beer? Well, there's over 9,000 breweries now. Back then there were less than 500 in the United States. So this is a cool thing. So here I am, and I was taking my clients with me there, and they were like, why are we here? What are we doing here? And then they take us back, and we get to sample beer right off the fermenters. And they're like, this is crazy. I thought everything tasted like Bud Light. And they're like, no, there's all these different styles. And then you learn the history of them. And so I got into it. And so I started talking about it and making it relevant and fun. And people said, hey, what brewery are we going to go to when you come to town? Like, okay. So kind of created that identity. And then I went and worked for this trade association, as I was mentioning, the oil and gas industry. And after a couple of years, I have no ill will against this company whatsoever. I will tell you that it was just a bad fit. And after 2.5 years with them, I was invited to be successful elsewhere. You know what that means?
Yes.
Yeah. You're fired. They didn't say it like that. They said, they basically said, we're no longer going to continue your employment, which meant that the last paycheck was
Yeah.
already issued. And yeah. And
I've
so,
been fired. I know how that feels. I know
yeah,
the words that are said.
invited to be successful elsewhere is what I told my mother. It made her feel so much better. It did. She's like, oh, that's great. Wait a minute. No, mom, it's exactly what you think. Hold on,
But
but
it
from
was great. But
yeah,
it was
yeah.
great.
And in a way, it was being freed, but then I had to figure out how to make money.
Mhm.
And I met this woman who, if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey teaches something called financial peace and all that. And if you're not familiar with him, check him out. But there is another guy by the name of Dan Miller who does the exact same thing, only for people who are looking for the right career. And so instead of being broke, you in debt with your money, it's you're underpaid or you're underappreciated and you're not in the job that's right for you. And he teaches you how to do this. And I took this seminar in class, and everything came back and said, you need to be an entrepreneur. And of course, I said I wasn't going to go into the industrial field. I wasn't going to Houston, and I'm definitely not going to become an entrepreneur. And so I became an entrepreneur. And that's what happened. And I really didn't buy into it early on. I thought for sure somebody's going to just pick me up and hire me, and I'm going to go back to work. So I didn't invest in myself. I just took the low hanging fruit and made a little bit of money here and there. And then all of a sudden it just hit that critical mass and it started to pick up and it snowballed and went and went and went and went. And 2019 was the most amazing year for me from a business standpoint. The opportunities I was given, the number of gigs I was getting, the people I got to work with, and then it came to a screeching halt. So how did I get into this? I'm going to say it very bluntly, but then again, you'll remember it this way. When I worked in sales, instead of taking my clients to strip clubs and expensive steakhouses, I took them to tiny little dumpy brew pubs and made them sit there and drink beer that they've never tried before in styles they've never thought existed while talking to the man who made them. And I hate to say it, but yes, I don't think I met a single female brewer in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, that
Now,
gives me a challenge to see who they are out there.
yeah, well, no, the industry is much more diverse now. I mean, women brewers are everywhere. And bonus fun fact, your official Beer Logic fun fact of the day is that the original brewers were women and they were called brewsters. And if you want an extra fun fact about this, oh yeah, this will blow your mind. Ready for this? During Halloween, you may be familiar with a certain image and certain images. You're familiar with the pumpkins and the skeletons and the bats and all those things, but there's another image that's associated with Halloween. Rewind, go back to the Brewsters. If you were a woman and your husband died, you had to find a way to make a living. They brewed beer. They had these big, large pots. They would brew. They had these pointed hats and they had brooms, which they would use to clean up all the grain. And they had cats around to keep the mice and rats away. And then when the beer was ready to be drank and sold, they would take their broom and set it outside. Big, large pots, cats, hats, brooms.
Makes me want to dress up like a witch.
And ladies and gentlemen, the modern day image for witches that we have comes from female brewers called brewsters.
I love this so much. And Chad, this is your story. This is the original podcast question, right? If I ask you to share your story, I can't see the time on this particular platform, but this was your story. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, beer's not going away anytime soon. If there's anything we've learned through pandemics, wars, everything else, beer is not going away. And beer is in many ways a commodity. So finding ways to differentiate and market it is always going to be a challenge. And we can always continue to learn from that. And so whatever industry you're in, if you think, I don't know what we're going to do next, maybe look to the beer industry, and that's where beer logic gets applied.
And Chad can tell you everything you need to know about beer. Okay, Chad. Well, you've given people where to reach you. We'll do that, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Hopefully, it won't be all the way in November, but if it is, we will celebrate together there at Epic.
Yeah.
In the meantime, y'all share this episode. If you have some really cool organization that you just need Chad to know about, reach out and tell him, and he will have an idea of how to get involved. He's got a whole different variety of things that he does, but Beer Logic is Chad Pilbeam, and he is amazing at it. And I will just say, if you are a person that hears this and thinks, I don't even like beer, I don't think I'm gonna benefit for this. I promise that a person who doesn't like beer in the room during a Beer Logic will get something out of it. So y'all, I want you to know how amazing it is, because I've experienced it. Chad, we go way back, but I know that there's breaks in those times where we're like doing our own things, right?
Yeah, we didn't talk to each other for like 8 years, or no, maybe it was like 6 years. I was like, oh yeah, hey, how you been?
Other than a like every now and then, on social. And then, but the thing is, we can do so much together with the people that we know. So think about that. Think about who's in your circle. Think about your network and who would absolutely love this episode. Share it with them, get them connected with Chad. And until next time, everybody, be empowering.